I'm halfway pleased with the gardening this year. So stay tuned and I will share with you guys our triumphs and our tragedies. Hello folks, welcome back to Pine Meadows Hobby Farm. I'm your host Jerry Hanson. To be completely transparent and honest with you guys, I'm going to show you my failures on my garden first, and then I'll show you my triumphs, because I strive here at Pine Meadows Hobby Farm to be as transparent and honest and as open as possible, so you guys can see what really goes on a homestead. None of the makeup and twinkle lights. This is real. So first of all, let's go back and I'll show you my tragedies. This is probably one of my biggest disappointments, and that is my corn crop. When I planted it, I was so excited because it grew fantastically at the get-go. And so the old saying goes, if your corn is knee-high by the 4th of July, you should have a really good crop. Well, it came up knee-high, and I thought, this is great. And I presented videos to you guys that my corn crop's doing great. But then it stopped. It stopped growing. And it could be due to the soil and the lack of nutrients. I think that's primarily what it is. So I've got to do some research on growing corn specifically, and I'm going to be doing something differently next year with this whole quarter of my garden. Now you notice my gardens is split up into 4 different sectors, 25 by 25 foot sections. I've got the corn and sunflowers in one section. So what I'm thinking I'll do next year, I'll go ahead and lay down plastic to cover the whole thing. That way I'm not dealing with weeds. And I'll lay down pea gravel. And then in the areas where the corn is growing, I'm going to lay in my drip irrigation line, because we're going off grid with our well, and I've got a 2,500 gallon tank that we're going to be using for irrigating and household water source. So I'm going to be installing the drip irrigation lines around the areas and doing lines where just the corn is going to grow, so I don't have to deal with weeds on the rest of it. I hate weeds. It's my arch nemesis. I hate weeds. The sunflowers did okay. They only got hip high, and that's as high as they got. One year I grew the corn and the sunflowers down here in the front. The soil must have been really nutritious down there, because the corn grew this high, not as high as I'd like, but it still grew high. And the sunflowers grew really tall. But this year the sunflowers did squat. I mean, they're squatting. My other failure, it was a great disappointment. My family loves my dill pickles. So I planted melons and pickles in this area, and I started them carefully from seed in the greenhouse. And they grew, and I brought them out here and I planted them, and within a month they were all dead. So this was a huge failure for me. I was so disappointed for not getting melons, especially those Minnesota midget muskmelons. Oh man, those are so good. But my triumph is my raised bed gardens. My buddy, Steve Davis at Pacific Northwest Off-Grid Homestead, he milled timber from his own land on his own sawmill, these beams, which I hauled back to my homestead and put together these fabulous raised beds. Then I started planting, and these raised beds are doing absolutely wonderful. They're phenomenal because I'm bringing in soil that's already formulated and packed full of nutrition and piled them into these raised beds. And then month by month, I've been growing as I could afford to fill them with that soil. So let's start with this bed right here. On this bed, you'll see I have beets, and the beets are getting big. I'll be canning beets here in a little while. I've got tomatoes galore. My tomatoes are doing great. I started these from seed inside the greenhouse. Then I've got cabbage. The cabbage is, some of the cabbage has come into the head. Some of them are stunted though. I'm not sure why. But we'll go ahead and let them keep growing, and the ones that are coming to a head, I'll be able to harvest those soon. And then the only other thing I've got in here is radish, which I have been harvesting these radish. No, actually, these are turnip. Yes, I love boiled turnip. So I've been gradually harvesting the turnip as I thin them. I let the little ones grow bigger, and then I'll harvest those and we'll kick them up. So I don't get a chance to preserve them too much because they're so delicious. I eat them. And then I've got the peas. I put them in this trellis system, and we put peas in. Then on the other side, we've got another row of peas. We've got carrots, and we've got Swiss chard over there that are growing great. And then, of course, I've got the marigolds growing over there. I planted this bed in June, and this is what it looks like now. This is the June bed, these two beds here. These two beds with the cucumbers are the July beds. I've got a bunch of different plants like sweet peppers. I grew a couple, but they're stunted. They never really did come up. And then I have some beets. They're stunted. I also have radish that is still maturing, and I'll be able to glean from the radish here pretty soon. But look at this whole row of carrots. And then this is my pride and joy. I put these trellises in, and I trained the vines up on these trellises, and my cucumbers are absolutely loving the trellis. Look how high this one cucumber is. It's fruiting with cucumbers. I'll be able to glean from those cucumbers and make a lot of pickles. You notice that some of the leaves have yellowed. I went ahead and added the appropriate nutrients to get them greened up again. Over in this other bed that we planted bush beans, and the bush beans are doing very well. It looks like I'll be harvesting these beans later this month because they're getting mature. So I'll keep a close eye on these. So the only things in this bed are bush beans and cucumbers. So my carrots are wonderful in July. My beets are wonderful in June. So plant my beets in June, the tomatoes earlier. Radishes are doing good any month. And then the cucumbers are doing good, and the bush beans are doing good in June. So I got to remember to plant my bush beans, cucumbers, and carrots in June. And then I've got the August bed. I've got some winter squash planted in here in the August bed. And look how big they've gotten so far. This is September 9th. I've got some Swiss chard that are going fantastic. This is what I planted in August. And then I have some failed beets. They're not growing very well, so don't plant beets in August in my microclimate. I'm in growing zone number 8, by the way. But I live high up in the mountains. And it's weird because everything fruits and leaves come out a whole month later after everything down in the valley comes out. So our little tiny valley up here in the Cascade Ranges is a bit colder and later in the year for planting. So we got to keep keep memory of that. But I do have some of the Swiss chard. I've got some cabbage I need to thin out that is growing great. And look at these peas. I put in this other trellis, and the peas are starting to grow that I planted in August, and they'll be growing up over this trellis. Now, this bed right here hasn't got any soil in it. I'll be bringing in soil next week. And we'll be planting in September. I'll be carefully selecting what crops they say I can grow in September. So this year is going to be an experiment for the garden to see what grows well in what month, and we'll go from there. And let's not forget the grapes. I'm going to go ahead and turn these grapes into some table wine. Just as an experiment. I've never made wine before, so this will be an experiment. I got plenty of jellies and jams laid up in store from 2 years ago, so I don't need to make any more jellies and jams. So next year we're going to be growing the garden, and we're going to be implementing new innovations to the garden for our growing zone. And I'll be cultivating my raspberries next year, and also adding strawberries and blueberries, trying to get some crops in that grow year after year that I don't have to plant. And that's what this whole section is about. Well, that's it on the garden. I hope you guys enjoyed the little bit of a tour and appreciated the transparency of our triumphs and our failures. I'm your host, Jerry Hanson. This is Pine Meadows Hobby Farm. I want to thank you guys personally for showing up and checking out our video vlog on how we're learning how to homestead and living the self-sufficient, self-reliant lifestyle. Please stay tuned for more videos. You could do that by subscribing, and also clicking that bell icon alerts you to new videos as I upload them. Helping out the channel, you can give us a thumbs up and leave a comment. That helps, believe it or not. Also, clicking that share button really helps out the channel greatly, because it shares our videos on your social media platforms. Oh, you can follow us on those social media platforms by following us on Twitter, Facebook, Pinterest, Reddit, Blogger, Instagram, Tumblr, and I'm also on Parler and LinkedIn. It is getting cold, so hey, I do have a little store down below. You can go check those out at Teespring. And I'm offering coffee mugs. You can drink your favorite beverage from those coffee mugs with our personal logos on them. I have two logos. One is Pine Meadows Hobby Farm. The other one is Duck in a Cup. I also, since it is getting cold, I have sweatshirts and hoodies for sale, and some hats I'll be launching pretty soon. There's socks down there. There's all kinds of stuff, so check those out. Hey, we'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.